let's get into a little bit of his conversion story. So, Cal, what is give us a short and skinny about your background. Where'd you come from? What led you into the church?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a complicated story, but also real simplistic. One thing that's super common in my generation is the revert, right? This idea of the Catholic revert. I was born and raised Catholic, technically speaking, and yet my catechesis was almost non-existent. You go through the motions of things, but there was a lot of concerns there, and also product of divorce. So textbook statistic in that regard, with all of the wounding and ugliness that comes with that. Parents divorced when I was 2. So,
Oh, wow.
You've got, as I'm growing, you're getting, one version of the faith expression from how one parent expresses it, another one from another parent in another household. Thanks be to God, I had both parents present to me. And of course, I'm blessed to be able to say they did the best that they could with what they had to give. I'm grateful for the gift of life and honoring my parents in the 4th commandment. But with the challenges that come with that, you're getting one message in one home. You're getting another message in another home. You're getting another message in public school for me. You're getting another message being raised by babysitters as a glorified orphan. And then you're getting another message at CCD, right? The Confraternity for Christian Doctrine. And, religion school, right? So you're getting ready for your confirmation. And that's a lot to process. You know what I'm saying? So, and then you get weird things, I also, I had a babysitter who was letting us play with Ouija boards by day, and then and that babysitter was a religion teacher at one of the local Catholic churches by night. The same one where I ended up getting confirmed. So it's like, you get this whole hodgepodge of just all of the different issues that are happening in our generation, right? We all know that over 1.5 of nuclear families are divorced at this point, and now as we get into the next generation, it's bifurcating even further with all of the identity confusion. So as I'm growing up in that, I am a self-proclaimed atheist by high school because edgy teenager, think I got it figured out. End up in college. And the college that I went to, they actually pick your courses for you in the first trimester. And so I was placed into Intro to Philosophy. And Philia Sophia, the love of wisdom. It is the most incredible thing. It's like my first love. But it was also a secular slipshod snapshot version of it where you get all of these different, thinkers, and there's absolutely no cohesion, no system. And then you're left to say, all right, figure out your truth. What is your truth? What does it mean for you? Right. It's this moral relativism that we're all wrestling with in this day and age, the opiate of the masses. And so here I am suffering like almost like a spiritual schizophrenia, I would call it, because you're left trying to put the pieces together and figure out, where do I fit in with all of this? Right. So I ended up having an extremely profound spiritual experience. I had a near-death experience coming out of my freshman year of college. And I've never actually really spoken about this publicly, but I've received faculties recently from my spiritual director to get into it. So, because the authenticity of what came out of this spiritual experience has been vetted thoroughly after 10 years of spiritual direction. But I was enveloped in the white light, completely and totally, like I was on the precipice of death. It felt like I was about to leave this earth. One of the last thoughts I had was, I'm literally never going to see my mom ever again. And now I am enveloped in the white light. And next thing I know, I am pulling back into it, clutching my steering wheel, because I'm parked, by the way, at this point, screaming, "No, God, please, no, not yet. People still need my help here." And it's like I came out of being on the verge of, I don't know, experiencing my personal judgment. I mean, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, my entire body was set on fire within. So a light and then a fire for me. And it was in every iota of my being. I mean, parts of my body I didn't even know existed.
Mhm.
And it was just this extraordinary experience. And next thing I know, I'm left basically trying to put the pieces. Okay, well, what was that? All right, we got this intro to philosophy. We've got this experience. I need to discern the truth. Why did those words come out of my mouth? Like, what's going on here? You know? And so I started to share it with my, my parents. Obviously two completely different worlds there. And they didn't believe me, like it was,
Wow.
I won't use the word traumatizing, but it was an extraordinary time. So that led to some severe trials, and um and then a journey of discovery. And I ended up devouring all of the world religions I could possibly get my hands on, like
Mhm.
all
Yeah.
Zoroastrianism of ancient Persia. You get the duality of the good and the evil
Yeah.
god.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get, of course, the emerald tablets of Thoth, and Hermes and all of this esoteric craziness. Hinduism, or the Sunata Dharma as it's referred to, Buddhism. As I'm going on in college, I rekindle with the professor who brought us Intro to Philosophy. And this man is the head of the religion department at a very credentialed school. I went to the Rochester Institute of Technology, which is, one of the top three computing universities in America.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned at the time, there was the trimester system, which is it's extremely rigorous. Very high burnout rate at that school. And so as I'm going on, I take Eastern Asian philosophy with the professor. So he's the
Yeah.
head of the religion department and the head of the philosophy department. And he's a devout Buddhist. And he got the direct Dharma transmission from the Buddha in Japan. Currently, he brought out this scroll showing us the lineage from the original Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama in the 400s BC, down to the Japanese lineage. You had the Theravada and the Mahayana schools of Buddhism that came with Buddha. And then you had it ended up splitting off into these different streams and rivers of thought in the chain of causation throughout the millennia. And at some point, Zen hit the scene. And then you have a split within Zen of the Soto and the Rinzai schools. With the
Yeah.
Rinzai school, they're much bigger on koans, which are these paradoxical phrases that are meant to expand your mind and try to transcend duality and all of the things that go with that ethos.
Yeah.
And then I was in the Soto school. So I'm learning this stuff. I'm devouring all these religions. I'm trying to synthesize. And essentially, I fell into the trapping of New Age, which I would describe in a sentence is quintessentially falling into error that God is at the top of a mountain and there's more than one way up that mountain. Choose your own adventure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, as opposed to what did Jesus Christ reveal in the Gospels? I am the way, the truth, and the life. There is no way to the Father except through me. The narrow gate, right? Versus the wide gate that leads to perdition. So here I am, discerning this authentic experience, but not knowing what it is, trying to place statements of what I think it is, according to what all these different world religions would believe it to be.
Yeah.
And then finally, thanks be to God, the reversion happened. So it happened because I was introduced to my mother, the Blessed Virgin Mary.
Mhm.
And in all of the mix of all of this, this knowledge quest that I'm on, I'm starting to imbibe the Marian apparitions, right? And, I'm falling in love with Our Lady of Fatima. I'm falling in love with Our Lady of Guadalupe. and, you know, exploring the patterns of how our Blessed Mother speaks to us. Very juxtaposed, by the way, to Our Lady of Medjugorje. There's a whole lot of talking going on there. It's really interesting. You know, you mentioned Medjugorje earlier, but you look at all of these different apparitions, and the safe route when you're dealing with private revelation is allow for Holy Mother Church to put the seal of approval on that thing.
Yeah.
Once you've got that, obviously, if you are a practicing Catholic and you subscribe to the magisterium, then you can look at these things. And what I came to discover is that it's like every single thing she says comes true to the T, and it's extremely inspirational. So thanks be to God, she's in the mix with all this other stuff that I'm learning. I'm dating a pagan at this point, just before my conversion, because it wasn't even in my mind that was a problem, that, you know, we're not evenly yoked and everything that comes with that, with the spiritual dangers, until I'm breaking bread with one of my separated brothers in Christ, a Methodist at work. And he's like, "How you doing today, Kyle?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you know, I'm doing good." And he's like, "How are you really doing today, Kyle?" Like,
yeah.
You know, I love this chick. I think I care about her, but, you know, she's a pagan, and I'm feeling God call me in the other direction. I'm you know, back into the Bible and all this stuff. And he's like, whoa, stop there right now. Get out. You're dating a pagan? Like, what's wrong with you, man? And he convicted my heart. And so I had a Guadalupe comforter that I just bought a couple months prior. I was waiting for the right moment to open it up. And that night was the night. And so I'm chilling. I'm literally wrapped in the mantle of Mary. And we're, you know, I hit the pillow, go to bed, get thrusted awake. And I'm looking up at an ugly, disgusting gray demon in its true heinous form. And I'm literally terrified it's extremely terrifying experience. And it's whispering incantations to my pagan girlfriend. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, either I'm absolutely nuts, like I've just gone off the deep end, or this is I'm a great former atheist. So it's like, all right, maybe this is the hypnagogic state. Like, let's give away let's process out a natural explanation to this. And I just wake her up. I'm like, you know, she's nuts. I'm nuts. I'm going to tell her what happened. We had no, you know, secrets or whatever. And I'm like, listen, you know, I care about you. I really think that, you know, I want to be respectful of your expression, but I really think that there's an absolute truth, like an objective truth. And I think this is it. And I think Jesus is it. And I really wish that we could experience that together, but I don't know whether or not you're going to be down with that. But I'm feeling God call me another direction. Let's process this together. And within the next couple of months, we amicably parted ways.
Did you ever tell her? Did you ever tell her about that demon experience?
Oh, immediately.
What did she say?
She was just like, "Oh, you know, oh, that's, you know," I don't remember exact words. It was like, "Oh, that's unfortunate. Like, it's weird," you know. She was just like, "Well," because she, you know, she could do channeling and all this other horrible things. So she didn't take it like that's completely foreign to my sentimentality. It was more like, you know, let me take this with a grain of salt because I know this guy's like a Christian or whatever. But let me process this in the context of my belief system, right? I'm sure that's what was going through her mind. Yeah. And later, I mean, in the moment, it's like, why the heck are you waking me up? I'm like trying to sleep, you know? But, you know, so it is what it is. And
what, how's she doing now?
I have no idea, man. This was 10 years ago.
Oh, man. I'm worried about that lady. All right.
Yeah, please. Yeah, if anybody's, you know, feels called to, please pray for her. You know, I don't know if she's alive. I don't know if she's where her walk is with the Lord. But what I can tell you is that, you know, listen, it's super weird. You know, like the whole experience is weird. I mean, and by the way, I do not condone at all cohabiting. I should throw these disclaimers in there. You know, like my spiritual director has actually recently approved me sharing this story for the first time ever. My wife is comfortable with me sharing it. You know, that's extremely important to me because it's embarrassing, right? I mean, we're talking about, you know, when I'm absolutely lost. on
Yeah.
my journey, seeking the truth and everything else.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. I mean, I'm the worst sinner to walk this earth, hands down.
Mm.
And so I'm trying to figure this thing out, and I'm a man, I'm a guy. I'm thinking, I see a problem, I need a solution. I see a nail, I need a hammer. And so I'm thinking, okay, either, like I said, I'm nuts, in hypnagogic state, whatever the thing is, or maybe there's something to this. I think you're supposed to pray in a situation like this. So I didn't know any of the advanced prayers like I know now, studying litanies and everything else, but um, I knew the Our Father. So I'm within the next night or two or whatever, I'm starting to pray the Our Father. She's passed out, and now I'm praying. Super weird, super, like, she could wake up, she'd be like, "What are you doing?" Like, come on. But whatever. I mean, it is what it is. And people in the whole world are going to have views on, like, this is nuts, and I agree, it is. But here I am. I'm doing an Our Father, and I couldn't get more than a few lines into the Our Father before she starts convulsing in her sleep. And I'm like, well, I've never seen that in 2 years. And and I could feel like a pushback. Like, it was, not good.
Wow.
And I was just like, okay, I'm out, like, this is too much. And yeah, and yes, I told her about this all as well, if in case anybody's wondering. But and then I did it a second night, and the exact same thing happened again. So now, the good former atheist in me, right? Scientific method, right? I've got 2 sets of data to work with. You have some things added, you have other things different, right? What's different is time. 2 different time periods, 2 different sets of sleeping. I'm not doing prayers out loud, as I recall, at least not both times or the whole time. So it's not like it's hitting into her subconscious. You're going to get people talking about psychosomatic and whatever, right? There's all of that. But 2 separate times, she's having a visceral reaction to the Our Father. And I don't remember if it was after the first or the second time, but I had an instant triple infusion of knowledge, as we would say in spiritual theology, where it came from without. It was suddenly there. It wasn't there before. And it was one, everything in the Bible is real, especially thinking about Ephesians 6. The spiritual battle is real, right? Ephesians 6:12. We wrestle not with the flesh, but with the powers and the principalities in the high places. There is this invisible realm. Think of like the visual spectrum, right? We got Roy G. Biv, and then there's everything else that we can't see. It's all there. It's real. And so it was like, take that super seriously. Like, maybe all this other stuff I've learned, I should really just temper that and stick with what's in the Bible. All right. Number 2 was, you're feeling this pushback, and it's like, whatever it is that you're trying to do right now, you are not in the driver's seat. You are not completely in control. You don't even understand the mechanics of this. Back off. It's dangerous. And, hold off and reassess. And by the grace of God, that really had a lot to do with leading me to the deliverance ministry that I've now been a part of for almost a decade. Because within a short amount of time after all of this, I had a conversion. And then not long after that, I ended up getting involved, and I got put to work in the kingdom. So that was wild. And obviously I understand the mechanics of it now. And then the third one was the absolute most important by far. It was, as much as you are trying to help, trying to be part of the solution with this situation right now, trying to care about this person, this is not how it works. Like, you can't just will the evil out of somebody, especially when they're not even conscious. It's just weird. It's like, that's not how this works. What needs to happen is, this child of God needs to have a conscious walk with her creator. And you may or may not be a part of that. You may or may not be instrumental in ultimately her figuring that out. But she needs to do that with her Father, her heavenly Father. And as soon as I got that triple understanding instantaneously, all at the same time, it basically laid the groundwork for serious conversion into Holy Mother Church. So I just to keep it at a flyby, I ended up having, we broke up. I prayed my own personal version of a surrender prayer. I immediately gave my life over to God the day that she moved out. And it just, I had this washing of grace. It was really visceral. And it gave me the ability to convert in ways that I would have never been able to do on my own. There's no way I could do this without God's help. And it set me on the path where that literal week, I had not one, not two, but three different versions of Christianity. These different people come into my life and invite me to their Bible studies, inviting me to their Sunday sermons and all of this stuff. Wow. And I just went for it. And it very, very quickly showed to me how all that stuff I learned growing up is super different than this, which led me down the final path of just tackling that 70,000 growing plus Mandela effect versions of Christianity that are out there from 15, 17 and onward versus the Catholic Church. And the rest is history.
Wow. So how did it, that's pretty fascinating. But how did it, so reversion to the faith, as you're processing this whole thing, this whole journey, that God allowed you to go on, so that he may be glorified. Obviously, he's being glorified. How did it make you? Did you feel cheated in a way as a youth that you didn't have this experience with the Blessed Virgin Mary, or did you feel cheated, or were you just really just embracing the journey?
I would say I didn't have that because thanks be to God, I met with a mystical doctor of theology. He put me through a fine-tooth comb, and after he assessed me, he said, "Don't call it the white light anymore. Call it the divine light." When I experienced the divine light experience, there was so much infusion there. One thing I failed to mention is in order to process that spiritual schizophrenia, and I don't use that term lightly, but I also don't use it. I use it very scientifically. In the East, Eastern practitioners would say that if you can't sit still for more than 5 minutes at a time, you're schizophrenic. That's what they would call schizophrenic. And 95% of Westerners struggle with that. So, it is what it is. But I had to process and get out of all of this slipshod understanding of what I think the truth is. And one of the ways that I did that was as a concession to God. I'd thrown a Bible that we were all gifted when we got confirmed into a box going off to college. And I opened that Bible and I started on page 1 in Genesis. And as I was going through the Bible, that's what ended up leading up to having that experience. And somewhere along the way in that whole journey, I got through the whole Bible that year. The book of Job really, really got me. I really got out of the book of Job that we really have no right to blame God for anything at all. So, that had a lot to do with, okay, the Blessed Mother didn't, it wasn't time for her to come in and give me the perspective to understand even what happened back then, all those years prior with the divine light, until it was all in God's perfect timing. So I'm thankful for that journey. But yeah, obviously growing up, it was extremely rough. It was a hard knock life. So.
Yeah. In your experience growing up in a home like that, and now you're a father of 4, husband of 1, what type of father has that made you, and a type of husband that's made you? What type of things have you, the good and the bad that you've taken from your upbringing, how's that formed you in your husbandry and your fatherhood now?
Yeah. Thank you for the questions. I would say that Really, really growing in a deep appreciation for everything that Holy Mother Church has to offer for us, of course, comes with the sacramental awareness, right? And one of those sacraments is matrimony. And we obviously know that, when you are in a covenantal relationship as opposed to just a contractual one, there's just so much that comes with that. There's Christ, loving his church, right? The man is the head, the woman is, the body. And, Ephesians 5, right? Ephesians 5 is just absolutely beautiful. And so when you grow in a profound awareness of that and understanding of that and appreciation for that, there's so many things that you need to keep at the forefront of your understanding, right? One is that you're a husband first, a spouse first, and then a parent second. It has to be in that order, or it's a usurpation of the kingdom, right? It's a usurpation of the nuclear family, because that's not the order of operations. So you have to be grounded with your spouse in order to give a good life, a holy life, a holistic life, if I may, to your children. And as someone who didn't have that growing up,
Hmm.
it has everything to do with fueling my recognition of my purpose, right? Keeping to the fore my duty and my state in life, right? We all have to keep prioritized our duties and our states in life, right? You're either a spouse first, or if you're called to holy orders, right? You exercise the religious life. And then,
Yeah.
you, like I said, in the married life, you're taking care of your children. And then you've got work as a man. You have to be the provider and the protector. And then there's everything else. There's community, right? You get that through church.
Yeah.
There's relationships, friendships, activities, and everything else that comes. And you really, really have to keep that order in check, right? And that's why, Holy Mother Church gives us orariums, rules of life, modalities by which to live. So yeah, I appreciate the question. I just, it was rough growing up, and it is an absolute joy to be able to be a part of reversing the generational
Yeah.
baggage that came before, and trying to set that example for the next generation.
Yeah. 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 And then it says, "Glory be to God." And then ask, um, Kyle, do you go to the Latin Mass or the ordinary form?
Yeah, so I heavily prefer the Latin Mass personally. The Latin Mass had a lot to do with my conversion as well. I started going early 2015, and I got married in the Latin Mass. My children are baptized in the Latin Rite, the Old Rite, which has 3 exorcisms as opposed to 1 in the Novus Ordo Rite. And so I have that grounding, which I'm extraordinarily thankful for, when it comes to having an awareness of where tradition fits in that 3-legged stool, that those 3 pillars that hold up Catholicism, right? Scripture, tradition, and magisterium. I also go to Novus Ordos. I love a Reverent Novus Ordo. And it's been interesting, right? Because I think at one point I probably would identify as a trad. I think that some of these distinctions, like we had talked in the earlier segment, they can be, they have a use. It's almost like stereotypes, right? Stereotypes exist for a reason. There's usually a grain of truth behind them,
That's
but
true.
also, you know what I'm saying? But there's also, time and place, context, and, be careful. You could get hurt if you're not, coming correct. So too with everything that comes with the tread distinction. And you've got mad treads, you've got glad treads, you've got rad treads, and you've got everything in between, right? And then, so I try to keep it to my theological competence when getting into something like that, because also being in the deliverance field, I am acutely aware of the fact that there are energumen, which is the term for those suffering from possession, the affliction of possession,
Yeah.
uh, that have been liberated by a consecrated host in the Novus Ordo. We also have documented evidence of Eucharistic miracles that were confected in the Novus Ordo. So I do not subscribe to the tensions out there that would say that, you know, the Novus Ordo is somehow not of God, or, you know, that that it's an objective occasion of sin or evil or vice or whatever, because that is on its face it's heretical. It's erroneous. It is not true. But I think that we should get back to our traditions of what came before. There's definitely something to Our Lady of Good Success, February 2nd, 1610, in Quito, Ecuador, warning that there's something about the second half of the 20th century. And then you have Our Lady of Fatima coming in saying we're going into some sort of, you know, period of diabolic disorientation. And,
Mm,
you know, I think that there's a profundity to ad orientem, right, where the priest is facing God along with everybody else. So we know where the focus is, that this is a sacrifice versus populum, right, facing the people, where there's this temptation because you're making so much eye contact, and then it can become like a performance, and you've got, you know,
yeah,
multiple expressions of the Eucharistic prayer. So you've got all this choice as opposed to
yeah,
just looking at the rigors of the book of Exodus, right, where it's like God is specific in the way that he wants to be worshipped. And by the way, I
yeah,
have to credit Father Ripperger for some of my gleanings on that, but I don't go so far as to say that, you know, Bunini's a Freemason. No one has ever produced those images. In fact, I've asked Father Ripperger when we met, hey, can we please have those? Like, I have an intense background in tech. And, you know, you can't tell me from a level of pragmatism that those can get scrubbed from the internet to the point where we'll never be able to find them. Right. Like,
mm,
that's what I was told. But I don't buy that. You know, in the
mm,
era of WikiLeaks and the era of this and that and whatever, there are professionals out there. Just like I don't buy that, you know, no one knows where Vigano is. That is like categorically impossible in the 21st. It's impossible. But anyways, I digress. We are way beyond. Do I go to the Latin Mass, the Novus Ordo? But I prefer the Latin Mass. I'm tri-ritual. I
yeah,
chant. I actually introduced the Gregorian chant back into the parish I was married in, and I'm so thankful to God for that opportunity. It was, from what I understand, for the first time since 1969 when it was suppressed. That's a huge deal. I love music. I love chant. I've got loads of chant books here. And I also chant in the Eastern liturgy, you know, the Byzantine liturgy. I seen Dennis Gradey, you flashed in the comments earlier. That's my brother in Christ. We founded East to West Theology, another YouTube
yeah.
channel that's out there, and people should check it out. So, but I like the Latin Mass because it puts me in level 2 of prayer. Level 2 is mental prayer. The Latin Mass allows you for the quietness to be able to do that, versus the Novus Ordo, which is there's a lot of talking. And so it's more level 1, vocal prayer focused. And
Mm,
level 2 is the gateway to the upper 7 levels of prayer, right? Effective prayer at 3, prayer of simplicity. Those are the ones we can do on our own. Then mystical contemplation, prayer of quiet, prayer of union, prayer of conforming union, and ultimately the goal, mystical marriage, which is, you know, Vatican II actually called the universal call to holiness, fulfilling the precept of Matthew 5:48, being perfect, even as Christ Father in heaven is perfect. So I love the Latin Mass for that, and the fact that it formed the vast majority of our ancestors. I don't think anybody should knock that.
yeah. I think if you look at Sanctum Concilium, I think no, I'm sorry, the General Instruction of the Roman Missal. It it does allow for periods, and it does recommend it periods of silence. The problem is that, like everything, there's just no application of it once you get down to the level of praxis in most parishes. Like you said, they just want to fill all the space up with noise and get out of there in 1 hour, no matter what. So, and this, I think that's tremendously harmful to people's faith that we don't include more silence into the liturgy. So yeah, thanks for that. The long form answer, and I think Dennis
No
wants to
doubt.
piggyback on that. The Byzantine. You guys know, you watch this channel. You know my preference is the Byzantine. Is my first love. That's where my heart is, in the East. I find that to be true worship. It was I experienced well. My first experience of the mass was just really basic. Just in a prison room. But and I found that to be extraordinary. I found that to be it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. In just this bare 12 by 10 foot room. It was just I was like, wow, this is worship. Everyone's quiet and it was completely reverent. And there was no pictures on the wall, no icons, no stations of the cross, no little doors that you open up, nothing, no large crucifix. But I knew this was a sacred space. But when I counted the Byzantine mass, my heart just swooned, and I knew I had come home in a sense. Um, so I don't. That's one thing I miss being here in Germany, that my only opportunity for that is like a train ride that's still like 3 hours. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, what was your thoughts when you first experienced the Byzantine or any of the Eastern rites?
So I just fell in love. I had the great privilege of going to a church that was just strikingly beautiful. And with a priest who's a chess master. And I mean, he's training us up on chess. I mean, just an incredible man, good confessor, and loved the chant. The chant is different. I do believe that I am, Western at heart. It's funny. My brother Dennis Grade is on the screen right now. I mean, there's just so much to say about how we kitten play, right, with East to West, because I have that Latin, the Tridentine training, if you will, which is, a very, very small segment of Catholicism. You think of, in the SSPX, they've got about 600,000 parishioners, according to their own website. The rest is either what was in adult parishes under JP2, I think circa 84. And then, you've got the FSSP, the Fraternal Society of St. Peter, that branched off of the SSPX in 1988 with the scandal of the consecrations. You've got the Institute of Christ the King in 1991, and then some other smaller ones. And
Yeah,
you put all that together between them and diocesan, and you're looking at maybe around 1 million. So, I mean, if you process that, that is like a sliver of Catholicism today, really, really small. And in Dennis's faith tradition, Byzantine, Eastern Catholic, that accounts for the bulk of, I think it's the 5 churches. He could correct me at some point, but then you've got about 23, maybe 24 now approved rites within those 5 churches, Byzantine being one of them. And that in toto accounts for about 15, maybe 16 million Eastern Catholics, because unfortunately in 1054 AD, there was the split with the Great Schism, where today you have about 280 million to 300 million Eastern Orthodox. So, we endeavor to breathe with both lungs of the one Holy Catholic Church and to kind of reclaim a holistic Catholic spirituality in appreciating both. So I'm Western for sure. And I prefer, what comes out of the Tridentine Mass. Dennis loves the Eastern liturgy. I was super edified by it. I've got a profound background with the Eastern Asian upbringing, learning Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, and all the different things that came from that, and bringing that to the fore while he's also been trained in the West, but being Eastern. You get a real good synergy of an appreciation for all of it.
yeah, definitely.
And by the way, thank you for sharing, David, about, how it impacted you being in prison and everything else, man. I can't even imagine coming to Christ, stripped of all of the nice, ornate things that you're going to get at a church, but to be able to discern and appreciate an Eastern awareness of the faith expression. I think that's super cool.
Yeah, it was. And I got a few questions here I want to get to for you. And we're gonna have to come back another time and do the AI thing. We're just way past the time now, but I want to get to these questions. A lot of people really interested in your conversion story. And Bradley Chase, he asked, honest question: a priest and a young man who takes other struggles upon himself came to our house and said many deliverance prayers. My wife and I felt as if we were dizzy, swaying. What was that?
Oh, I'm not going to make a diagnostic on that. I really appreciate, Bradley, you sharing that testimonial. A priest and a young man who taking other struggles upon themselves, it's hard to know for sure what that meant to them as opposed to how it was experienced. But I would need to understand more context behind why they were there in the first place. I mean, if you've got a priest of God, I'm assuming Catholic, that is coming with a young man, is this young man, I mean, is this priest an exorcist? Is this young man, does he work for him? I don't know. And, you know, you're having this visceral physical experience. I mean, there could very much be something to that. You know, there's one of the things that's critical to discern. In fact, this is actually a pious critique that I have of one of your recent videos, David, was, you know, it feels like when Father Ripperger tells everybody to repeat things 3 times, it seems like almost like witchcraft or like some sort of like a ritual. What's the point? Just stick to the
Oh yeah,
sacraments.
that's, yeah, tapping my heels together 3 times. Yeah, that was my punchline.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's actually an answer to that. So, I mean, two uh, um, uses or purposes for that. One would be it's the same thing that you see in the Tridentine Latin Mass. You see these triple repeating aspects. It's because it's for multiple reasons, but one huge one is to tap into the reality that God is a Trinity.
Mhm.
So, you know, you're acknowledging God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, and particularly if you're trying to break a curse, you know, you're trying to undo, because a lot of times in the magical rituals, you're going to get an inversion of that, because that's what the devil does. So that's one reason for that to happen. And then the other one is going back to attempting to answer Bradley's question to the best I can with the information that's available. It's that when you're trying to discern invisible experiences, right? Like as an intake specialist, when I'm bringing in, when we're witnessing to somebody, our initial job is to try to figure out, you know, is this psychological in nature? Is this spiritual in nature? Or as can often be the case, is it a mixture of both? And therefore, how do we make sure that we're applying the appropriate remedies? And of course, the Catholic Church is very discerning about this. You have to rule out the natural, right? The psychological first. And but when you're in the realm of the spiritual, we have a set of tools by which we do that, right? And it's harnessing the tools that are found in philosophy and the tools that are found in theology. And philosophy, you know, is a science, right? It's the ultimate end of it's the ultimate light that man can ascertain by the natural light of his own reason, right? It's the pinnacle of what we can figure out. St. Thomas Aquinas says that every single degree, every art, and every science in existence is when the Catholic Church gifted mankind with the university system in the thousands or 1100s, all degrees are subalternated to philosophy, right? Like an engineering degree is subalternated to physics, which is subalternated to mathematics, which is subalternated to philosophy. And there's something happening there. You can tell when a science or an art is petering out, because when the first principles from which you discern the rest of that science stop somewhere and it starts taking things for granted as true in order to apply this, it's borrowing that from a higher science, right? It's subalternated to something higher. Philosophy is the tool where we discern what's going on in the invisible realm, because that's where you get metaphysics, it's where you get logic, it's where you get epistemology, right? It's where you get morality. And those are extremely important tools in order to discern, is this something diabolic in nature? So
Yeah,
you would need to apply that in order to try to figure out what's going on specifically in Bradley's case.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, thanks for that. And Bradley says, oh, the man was from seminary. Okay, all right, all right. Yeah, I like your point about, yeah, the theory. I love the repetition in the liturgy, or even when it comes to the sacraments, right? Of course, my concern about sacramentals and people's uncertainty and not feeling as, oh, did I do it enough times? Do I have to do it again and again and again? How many times do I have to do it? Um, that always concerns me. And even in, my practice of Wiccanism and Freemasonry, everything is in threes. You have to do it 3 times. You march 3 times around the lodge in the first 3 degrees. 3 degrees. It's just 3 knocks on the door. It's just everything is in repetition, And so so I see demonic aspects as well. They would also focus on repetition. And so any time I hear this outside of the sacraments, I just have a suspicion, man. Are people not going to trust what's going on? And so that's really my concern about the 3 times.
And you do need to be on guard against scruples, right? If you've got
Yeah,
people worrying about the devil being under every rock, they're opening their deliverance prayers for the laity book every single day, like making it their primary devotion, right? You don't need to necessarily do something like that unless you are dealing with a very extraordinary circumstance and you've been given a specific prescription by the authorities.
yeah, yeah. William Penn says, going back to the demon gossip is fascinating. And that's precisely the problem is a distraction from what the faithful ought to be focused on. Do you agree with that, or what's your thoughts on that, Kyle?
I mean, we touched on it earlier, right? I mean, whether or not it can be said that what Father Ripperger is doing is gossip, I think is still up for debate. If not, I mean, it would be great to get him involved, right? We can all email info@sensustraditionis.org and try to connect and collaborate. That's what we should all be doing. So, like I said before, you have an instance in church history where the information from the case made it out to the community because it taught everybody something. You have the 2019 instance that my exorcist colleague pointed out earlier today. So there is something to that, but you do need to be cautious, as we've been touching throughout this conversation. Like, if this is at the realm of private revelation and it could be prone to error and it's happening in real time, as you're saying, it's like, in general, the church teaches to be super cautious about something like that. Let it play out. And in that vein, yeah, maybe people are not focused on what they should be focused on.
Yeah. And in your conversion story, a lot of people made a couple comments. Bradley came in and said, "Our Blessed Mother is so beautiful." And then
Amen, brother.
once you started talking about what's happening with the ex girlfriend, Yankee City Girl says that escalated quickly. and then,
Oh yeah, it
and
did.
then William says, "Whoo, yeah, that really went up a notch."
Yeah,
That is that is good stuff, man.
it was
Cal
nuts.
D, thanks for coming on the show, man. We gotta have you. I gotta have you back, man. We can dig into the AI topic, man. We went a long time, and so
Right.
I really appreciate all the
Oh
time
my
that
goodness, we spent 2 hours.
yeah, I really appreciate all the time that you spend here and everything that you share, man. You're a really cool guy, and love the ministry that you're doing. You and Dennis over there, so keep it going. And I gotta have you back, man. Appreciate you.
It's a great privilege, pleasure, and honor. Thank you again, Dr. David L. Gray. Appreciate you.
I
And let me know
appreciate
when Further Hell Nah is going to make an appearance on our episodes, bro. Because I need to. I don't know if it's like Dr. David L. Gray sometimes, Brother David at other times, which is my default in ministry, just brother, sister, whoever, very Franciscan. And then there's Father Hell Nah, man. You know, like I want to know when he's coming on the scene.
Oh yeah, yeah. He'll be back September 10th, man.
Oh
He,
shoot.
he'll oh yeah, yeah. So I think next week he'll be back. Very funny episode. I'm not gonna spill anything, but
Mm-hmm,
it's
mm-hmm.
gonna be spicy, as Kyle likes to say. So we'll see. All right, God
Hallelujah.
bless you,
Looking
man.
forward to it. God
Thanks for
bless you. Thank you
everyone.
again.
Everyone, thanks for tuning in. David O. Gray Show, off code Unscripted on St. Dominic's Media. Remember, Jesus loves you and is there for you. So go ahead, live your life like salvation matters. But until then, till next time, blessings and shalom to you and to yours. God bless.